So a commenter here on YouTube recently asked me a question that I thought warranted its own video. Basically, they asked, what happens if you thought your series would be a trilogy, but as you start fleshing out the story and main concepts, it seems like there's only enough content for a duology? And is it bad if your trilogy turns into a duology? This is a question that I think a lot of us writers find ourselves asking at some point or another. How many books are actually going to be in this series that I'm planning or currently working on? It's pretty easy to figure out if you're writing a standalone, but after that, it can get a little tricky. Personally, I thought Alexia Legends would be a trilogy in the beginning, but once I started working on book 1 and planning out books 2 and 3, I quickly realized that it would be more like a 5-book series with a possible prequel. So to figure this out, here's what I did. Now you do need to do at least a little bit of planning and outlining to really know how many books you're going to have in a series. But you can figure this out with just a few main concept ideas if you really don't want to plan out any other details until you get there. First, have an idea of where the series is going to end. What is the big bad at the end of the series? And what major conflicts did the characters have to face to get to that final battle? I'm a fantasy writer, so of course I assume that the finale is going to be a literal big battle, but just work that out for whatever your genre is. You don't have to have the smaller conflicts in this list, but they would be helpful to know. You only need the biggest picture ideas though. So we're kind of going to use a method of working you backwards here. You're going to come up with your finale, and then you are going to ask what big conflicts need to happen for all the characters and all the plot events to get there. So now you probably have 2 reference points. I'm assuming you already know how you want to open your series and how you want to close it. Basically, this is just like how I outline a book. I ask myself, what needs to happen for everyone to get here? Okay, what needs to happen for everyone to get there? Okay, what needs to happen for everyone to get there? Until I get back to the start of the book. Now, figuring out the specifics may not be necessary for you, like figuring out how exactly they defeat the big bad, versus just knowing what the big bad is. But try at least having an idea of some of the most important elements that lead them from one thing to the next. So now that you've got this list, the last one on your list, the finale, is going to be the finale of the final book in your series. And now you can take the rest of those major plot points that you've worked on, and you should have an idea on how these can be main plots of books, or if there's something that needs to be combined with other elements. To figure that out, I would take the elements and work them into a very basic 3-act structure format. This way you should be able to figure out if that's enough content to make up the main plot of an entire book. And this will be totally dependent on the word count you're looking to fill. A shorter book will require less elements, so assuming you haven't published anything in the series so far, you could try adjusting your expectations for word counts of each individual book. If you were originally planning on writing 100,000 word books, maybe your new ideas are better suited to 50 to 60,000 word novels. Or if 1 or 2 of your major plot points are way more substantial than the others, see if you can split them up or combine them to make more equally proportionate books. Trilogies are often so popular because they follow the same 3-act structure that pretty much all stories do. The first book will be Act 1, the second book will be Act 2, and the third book will be Act 3. This is just a really nice way to set up a story because it will give readers such a clear definition of beginning, middle, and end of the story, which we just really love. And it just makes sense to structure and plot out a series the exact same way you would structure and plot out a novel itself. So a traditional setup for stretching 3-act structure over a trilogy would be to have the first book end at the first plot point, or the break into 2 if you're following Save the Cat. Then the second book will contain the midpoint and ends with the third plot point, or the break into 3, and the third book will end with the resolution. There is a common writing struggle known as sagging middle syndrome. This is where the middle of the story just has slower pacing, is less engaging, has less substance, and just overall drags to the reader. And this is Act 2 of the story. This is notoriously difficult to write as it is such a large portion of the book. In Act 2, you're trying to juggle so many parts while also working through a lot of character development. You're probably also giving your characters a lot of setbacks at this point in the story, and if not balanced well with happier moments, can make the book feel repetitive. Now, this is also a problem that plagues trilogies. I can't think of a single trilogy where the middle book was my favorite one. Usually I like the first one the most, the last one the second, and the middle one the last. The last part of the question was, is it a bad thing if your trilogy turns into a duology? The answer is no. This writer identified an issue in their series early on in the writing process, which is awesome. It can sometimes take a lot of drafting to figure these things out, and this is a problem we see in a lot of published books. So it is great to identify that at an early stage and be able to completely avoid it. Sometimes I think we get wrapped up in the idea of our story being a certain number of books. Like, we just get a concept of the series and we see it as a trilogy, and we just have trouble trying to rearrange that into anything besides what we originally imagined. Other times we just really want to write a certain number of books for a story. Or we see other people being successful doing things like writing trilogies, so we think maybe that's what we should do too. But I don't know a single person who would not prefer reading a well-paced duology over a trilogy with a not-so-great middle book. Yes, some readers only read standalones, and some readers only read short series. But these are a small outlying percentage of readers, really. The best thing to do for your story here is figure out what it needs. Just because a series has a certain number of books doesn't mean it's better or worse in any way. That's just how many books this story needed to be told in entirety. Now, if you're thinking about publishing, and definitely if you're thinking about publishing traditionally, there are things that do better in different markets. If you're going traditional, and I am no expert in traditional publishing by the way, I have heard that for debuts, a first book that can stand alone but has great potential for a series is the most preferred thing, especially for fantasy. And if you are going indie, there are so many different publishing strategies. Some people go more traditional where you write a book of average size and release it at a normal interval, like a year or so. You also have indies who will write a whole series and come out with them back to back. Or you have indies who will write very short installments of novels and then release them every few months. So basically, if you're going indie, you can do whatever you want. Now, all that being said, if you are really set on writing a certain number of books, then you could, like I said earlier, consider making each book shorter than you originally planned. And that is, if that's an option. Sometimes it's just not because of your plot points. But I think for most stories, you could pull this off pretty well as long as you're careful about planning the plot points and leaving each book off on a good place. My series started as a trilogy and now it looks like a 5-part series. The number of books in a series isn't all that big of a deal. What's most important is figuring out what is going to be best for that story. Otherwise, pacing can really be an issue. And, depending on where you are in your planning or outlining or writing, you might find later on that there's some more of the story to tell once you get there. And you'll end up needing a trilogy or even a longer series to give enough space for all your new ideas. If you'd like to dive into the world of Alexia, you can check out Age of the Gods, which is a free short story I'll have linked down below. Alright, that's all I got for you, so thanks for watching. Bye!